Today, we're going to dive into a really powerful story about a choice. And not just any choice, but one that was made under some serious pressure, where picking the right person to help could literally mean the difference between a financial disaster and a quiet, manageable resolution. Just think about this for a second. You're in a really tough spot. You turn to an expert for help. You expect them to solve your problem. And yeah, you expect to pay them for it. But what happens when the absolute best, most honest advice they could possibly give you is advice that earns them nothing, not a single penny? Well, that's exactly the situation we're breaking down today. So what kicks this whole thing off? It's something called a Strike 3 Holdings subpoena. Now, you don't get this in the mail from them directly. Instead, your internet provider, your Comcast, your Verizon, sends you a notice. It says an adult film company, Strike 3 Holdings, is accusing you of illegally downloading their movies and is now legally demanding your name and address. You can just imagine the wave of stress and panic that comes with a letter like that. And that brings us to the person at the heart of this story, an anonymous client in Virginia who gets this exact notice. Now, their problem was even bigger because this is such a niche area of the law. There was nobody in their local area who had the right experience. So they had to find an expert they could trust, someone they'd probably never even meet in person, to guide them through this whole mess. So their search for help began. And this is where the story gets really, really interesting, because it pretty quickly becomes a tale of two very different lawyers with two totally opposite approaches. All right, so the first call was with a lawyer described only as prominent. The way the client tells it in their review, this conversation felt a lot more like a high-pressure sales pitch. The attorney was immediately pushing for an hourly rate, shot down a potential settlement estimate as completely unrealistic, and then told the client they needed to sign on within 2 days. It was just all pressure, all urgency. And then they made the second call, this time with attorney Jeffrey Antonelli. The experience could not have been more different. First off, it was a free consultation, and instead of pressure, there was patience. This attorney actually took the time to walk the client through every single option, laying out the pros and cons of each path, with zero rush to get them to sign anything. And it's this second conversation that leads us straight to the defining moment of this entire experience, what we're calling the honesty test. It's that one moment where a professional's integrity is truly put to the test. And this one line from the client's review is the key to the whole story. Among all the options that were laid out, the attorney included the option to just ignore the subpoena. The client immediately saw how huge this was. Why? Because in their own words, this was the one option which makes him no money. This wasn't about landing a new client, it was about giving them all the information, period. And this just lays out the choice the client was facing so clearly. On one side, you've got a lawyer pushing an hourly rate with scare tactics. On the other, a firm offering a predictable flat fee, time to actually think, and a full rundown of every possibility, even the one that wouldn't make them a dime. The contrast just makes the decision a no-brainer, right? So, what happened after the client made their choice, all based on that one moment of honesty? Well, the resolution was both surprisingly quick and incredibly positive. So, trusting their gut, the client from Virginia hired Antonelli Law. They agreed on a flat fee, which right away gets rid of all that anxiety about billable hours stacking up. And with a clear plan, things move fast. The whole case was settled in just a few weeks. But here's the best part, the real payoff. Remember how that first lawyer said the settlement estimate was not at all realistic? Well, not only was it realistic, but the final settlement came in for an amount that was, and I'm quoting here, a good bit lower than even the initial more optimistic estimate. The trust they put in that honest approach paid off, literally. This is so much more than just one person's story. It's a powerful case study in how to navigate a really stressful crisis. So, what are the big lessons we can pull from this whole experience? First, it all ties back directly to the law firm's own stated philosophy. The goal isn't to push for a fight or rush a settlement. The goal is to give the client all the information so they can make the absolute best decision for them. And this client story just proves that's not just some marketing slogan. It's how they actually operate. So, what can we all learn from this? It really boils down to 3 crystal clear takeaways. 1. In a complicated situation, find a real specialist, even if you have to look outside your own city. 2. Pay close attention to how someone communicates. Transparency and patience are worth so much more than high-pressure sales tactics. And 3, the right advisor won't just tell you what to do, they'll make sure you understand all your options so that you can make the final call yourself. And that kind of leaves us with one last question to think about. This story gives us a pretty powerful answer. It suggests that true advocacy, true help, isn't about winning a contract or crushing the other side. It's about putting a person's well-being first, with clear, honest guidance, even when that honesty isn't profitable.